Sydney Harbour Bridge painter. 1945, he worked 134 meters above Sydney Harbour with no harness and no net. By the time one coat dried, another needed applying. The bridge has never stopped being painted since. Mother and daughter watch tall ship. Thames, 1880. That ship carried cargo from a world the daughter would never visit. The mother had probably never left London. They watched it pass in silence, trailing a wake neither could follow. We Are the World recording session. 1985. 4 to 5 artists surrendered their egos in one studio on one night. Michael Jackson co-wrote it in a week. The song raised $63 million. Nobody argued about the microphone order. Almost. Andre the Giant and Fred Savage, Princess Bride. 1987. Andre the Giant stood 7 feet 4 inches and weighed 520 pounds. He carried Fred Savage between takes like a grocery bag. The boy grew up. The giant had 2 years left to live. Swimming pool with Christmas tree. Los Angeles, 1955. Southern California invented a version of Christmas that required no snow, no coats, no fireplace. Subscribe to British Gallery if you love history. And also subscribe if you live in the United States. Also comment your country name and snowball fight, Sweden. 1901. The children are dressed in their heaviest wool, coats buttoned to the throat, yet running full speed toward each other. Joy has always found its way through whatever century it inhabits. Great North Dakota blizzard. 1966. The storm buried cars, severed roads, and stranded entire towns for days. Cattle froze standing. Visibility dropped to 0 for hours. North Dakota called it a storm. Veterans called it the worst they'd seen. Elvis signing autograph on boy's head. 1959. He could have signed anything the boy held out. Instead he bent down, pressed pen to scalp, and made that kid into a story he'd repeat for the rest of his life. Old school KFC menu. Before the combo meal was invented, you simply ordered pieces. The prices feel impossible now. Colonel Sanders franchised a handshake agreement on a recipe at age 65. The chicken came later than the legend. High school auto shop class. 1950s. These boys were being trained for an economy that assumed every man would own a car requiring manual maintenance. Most of them became exactly the fathers that economy expected. A few became mechanics. Chief Irontail cranking automobile. 1915. He appeared on the Buffalo nickel minted that same year. His profile stamped on currency while he cranked an engine that was erasing the world the coin supposedly on it. Teacher in the same outfit. 40 years. In year 2 he noticed the coincidence. In year 3 he made a decision. For the next 37 years, his students received consistency they didn't know they needed. The outfit became the lesson. Typical Midwest family. Circa 1904 people, 1 photographer, and a Sunday morning worth preserving. Nobody in this frame knew they'd become somebody else's typical. They were simply present for a moment that refused to disappear. Group of boys, Washington. Early 1940s. Some of these boys would be eligible for the draft within 3 years. They don't know that yet. Right now they are just standing in sunlight, squinting at a camera, still entirely themselves. Mary Smith, Knockalupper, East London. 1930. 6pence a week to shoot dried peas at strangers' windows before dawn. She woke London while London slept. Her profession vanished the moment wind-up alarm clocks became affordable. She kept the pea shooter. American dad and Canadian mom. Niagara Falls Halloween. 1985. They crossed an international border to wear costumes at a waterfall. Whatever this photograph was supposed to prove, it absolutely proves it. They look exactly like what they dressed up as. Watching Cubs game outside Wrigley Field. 1932. These fans couldn't afford tickets. They watched from the street, craning above fences, catching fragments of the game through gaps. That same year, Babe Ruth allegedly called his shot inside that park. Victorian home moved by horsepower. San Francisco. 1908. The earthquake of 1906 had left entire neighborhoods in rubble. San Francisco rebuilt faster than any city in history, which sometimes meant moving what survived rather than building from scratch. School bus, West Lynn, Oregon. 1904. The children boarded a boat because the river was the road. Rural Oregon in 1904 ran on water and timber. The school was wherever the current could carry them safely before dark. Louis Armstrong in Seattle hotel room. Circa 1954. Between sets, between cities, between adoring crowds. He sat alone in a hotel room that looked like every other hotel room. The trumpet was never far. Neither was the handkerchief. Soldier's last kiss before deployment. 1963, the ship was already moving. Someone gripped tighter, knowing the count of seconds was finite. Egypt was a world away in 1963, and the news from there was never entirely reassuring. Buying a refrigerator. Detroit, 1941, $127.75 in 1941 is roughly $2,700 today. The man behind the counter wrote it up like it was routine. For the family buying it, this was a significant decision and a significant appliance. Black Sabbath's first photograph. 1968, before the platinum records and the arena tours, 4 working-class boys from Birmingham stood together for a photograph. Ozzy Osbourne was a former slaughterhouse worker. The darkness came from somewhere real. Texas Track Club. Sports Illustrated shoot. 1964, Sports Illustrated sent a photographer to Abilene, and these women showed up ready. Title IX was still 8 years away. They competed anyway, trained anyway, and ran faster than the world's expectations. Postcard of Van Horst's last painting location, 1900 to 1910, somewhere in that Orvers-Saroys field. He set up his easel for the last time. The crows were there. The wheat was there. The revolver was in his pocket. The painting came first. Jackie Chan with wife and son, 1987, between stunts that broke his nose, skull, cheekbones, and ankles. He was also a father. His son JC is the small one here. Public fame consumes everything. Photographs catch what it misses. Crowded Atlantic City Beach, 1908, colorized wool bathing suits, full length on men and women both. The ocean didn't care what century you dressed for. Thousands packed this shoreline every summer before air conditioning made inland survival possible. First Rolling Stones photograph, 1962, Brian Jones placed the ad, assembled the band, and named them after a Muddy Waters song. He is in this photograph. 6 years later, he'd be replaced. 2 years after that, dead. U.S. soldier playing jump rope with children, England. 1944, he was stationed far from home waiting for an invasion that hadn't happened yet. The children pulled him into their game. D-Day was still months away. He played anyway. Mark Twain in Tesla's laboratory. Circa 1894, 2 of the most unconventional minds of the century stood in the same room and ran electricity through their bodies for entertainment. Neither considered this unusual. Both were right not to. The Little Rascals with Petey the Pitbull. Circa 1935, the ring around Peter's eye was hand-painted for early episodes and later bred selectively. He was gentle enough to film beside children daily. The breed has been fighting its reputation ever since. Gene Hackman in The French Connection. 1971, he drove a car beneath an elevated subway at 90 miles per hour through real New York traffic. No CGI. No closed streets. The cars swerving out of the way weren't acting. Russian Imperial officer feeding cat and hedgehog, Eastern Front. 1916, an officer at the Eastern Front paused the wall long enough to pour milk for a cat and a hedgehog simultaneously. Whatever his rank, that moment was entirely his own. Burger King with free internet, Manhattan. 1998, the internet existed in 1998 mostly for people who already knew it existed. Burger King offered access to everyone else over a Whopper. The future arrived, as it usually does, slightly sideways. SS Princess May grounded. 1910, built in 1888. She ran aground on Sentinel Island and sat there, hull suspended, bow lifted, like a ship in a painting. The crew survived. The photograph became more famous than any voyage she completed. Move-in day, Lakewood, California. 1953, Lakewood was built almost entirely in 1 year. 17,500 homes, assembled at industrial speed for returning veterans. Move-in day was every day. The American suburb was invented here, in this kind of photograph. Marpessa Dawn carried by husband Eric Vunda. CA 1961, she had just starred in Black Orpheus, the film that introduced Bossa Nova to the world. He carried her. The camera caught the mid-flight between the film and whatever ordinary Tuesday followed it. Sausage vending machine, Berlin. 1954, West Berlin in 1954 was still rebuilding from rubble. A warm sausage dispensed automatically from a machine on a city street was evidence of something returning, normalcy, commerce, or just a desire for both. Mickey Mouse consoling Kermit. Jim Henson tribute. Jim Henson died at 53 from an undetected streptococcal infection. Disney animators didn't issue a statement. They drew one. Mickey had one arm around Kermit's shoulder. No words were necessary. None were attempted. Nagoya Castle Tenshu, 1877, completed in 1612, photographed in 1877, destroyed by American bombs in 1945. It took 3 centuries to build that skyline and 1 air raid to end it. A reconstruction stands today. Almost. Gas station, Washington, D.C., 1920s. The automobile was still new enough that a gas station required explanation. These attendants pumped, checked oil, cleaned windshields, and wore uniforms. The full-service model lasted another 60 years before vanishing entirely. Janis Joplin with her psychedelic Porsche, 1960s, she had a local artist paint it in a rolling landscape of butterflies and flowers. It was valued at $4,500 when she bought it. After her death at 27, it sold for $1.76 million. Walter Cronkite interviewing Professor Mai, Vietnam, February 20th, 1968. Cronkite flew to Vietnam after Tet and came back changed. His subsequent editorial declaring the war a stalemate led LBJ to reportedly say, "If I've lost Cronkite, I've lost Middle America." Calamity Jane, Deadwood, South Dakota, circa 1876. She drank, swore, and shot better than most men in Deadwood, and made sure everyone knew it. The frontier mythology she helped create eventually swallowed the complicated woman who lived inside it. Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder, Superman, 1978. He wore the cape and she believed it. The chemistry between them convinced an entire generation that a man could fly. Reeve performed his own flying sequences suspended from nearly invisible wires. Richard Pierce, 14-year-old telegraph messenger, 14 years old, 9 months on the job, working 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. The photographer documented him as evidence, not a portrait, but a case. Child labor laws were still being argued. Children of miners, Osage, West Virginia, 1946. They stood at the company house door. Company house, company mine, company town. Their father's wages went back to the same company in rent. The children in this frame were born into a closed system. Girls at American Tobacco Company, Wilmington, Delaware, May 1910. They were clearly under 14. The photographer noted it. The factory owners already knew. Child labor reformers were collecting exactly this kind of evidence. Systematic, dated, impossible to argue was a single exception. W.P.A. Wecker and family at dinner. Ziegler, Illinois. The Works Progress Administration fed families, built roads, and employed artists. This dinner table was a program's entire argument, rendered in a single frame of a family eating because the government decided they should. Rural school children. Wisconsin, 1939. One-room schoolhouses in 1939. Wisconsin served children across 8 grades simultaneously. The teacher managed everything alone. These children walked miles through winter. The education they received was uneven. The attendance was not. French knife grinders working on their stomachs. 1902. They lay flat on angled boards, pressing blades against grinding wheels at chest height to spare their spines. The posture looks impossible. They held it for hours. The knives came out sharp. Corvette Mako Shock 2. 1965. GM designer Larry Shinoda built this concept after Bill Mitchell caught a Mako Shock and hung it in the design studio as a reference model. The car never went to production. The legend did. Cumberland Street slums, Dublin, 1940s. Paul Popper. Dublin's tenements in the 1940s housed families in conditions unchanged since the 1880s. Paul Popper photographed what the tourist boards didn't. The view from Cumberland Street was Ireland's other postcard. Company C, Hill 742, DAC 2, November 1967. They descended the side of that hill after 4 days of fighting that killed 376 Americans. The battle for the Central Highlands accomplished its tactical objectives. The men climbing down looked like survivors. First day of work. Sao Paulo, Brazil, 1984. He pressed his shirt, polished what he had, and stood in the frame like someone who understood the weight of a first day. Brazil in 1984 was emerging from military rule. He was emerging from something too. Typical American family, Detroit. 1950s. Detroit in the 1950s was the richest city per capita in the United States. The auto industry had built this family's furniture. This house, and the expectation that the next decade would be equally kind. Women having tea, New Zealand. 1890 New Zealand gave women the right to vote in 1893, first in the world. These women are photographed 3 years before that, taking tea with the practiced composure of people who already knew they deserved more. Spanish Battle of Trafalgar flag. 1805 Hold a person next to it and understand why Nelson's fleet feared the signal flags crossing the horizon. Spain flew enormous standards so every ship in the fleet could read orders through cannon smoke. Manchester United fans. 1975 This is before the Premier League, before replica shirts were widely available, before the corporate transformation of English football. These fans wore their own clothes to Old Trafford and still called it theirs. The Sloane family, London. 1932 Britain in 1932 was deep in the Great Depression. The family dressed formally for the photograph regardless. Sunday clothes required Sunday posture. The camera was still a serious occasion. Turkey dinner aboard Pan Am Stratocruiser. 1949 The Stratocruiser had a lower deck lounge accessible by a spiral staircase. Pan Am served hot meals on china with silverware at altitude. The entire experience cost roughly what a used car cost below. Woman cooking on bathtub, Lower East Side. 1940s The tenement had no kitchen. She built one anyway. Burner balanced over porcelain. Dinner assembled in the only flat space available. Necessity is the actual mother of invention, and this is her portrait. Iran Air flight attendant. Early 1970s Iran Air operated international routes to Europe and America in the early 70s. The attendant is uniformed, modern, and entirely representative of a Tehran that was about to change beyond recognition within the decade. Terry Hennessy, age 29. 1971 he played 394 professional matches across 3 clubs and 1 national team. 29 years old and looking directly into a camera that had no idea how the career would be remembered or forgotten. Potato chips in a box, 59 cents. 1972 the bag hadn't yet become standard. The box kept them from crushing. A design logic that lost the argument by 1980. 59 cents in 1972 is roughly $4 today. The chips have not kept up. Buzz Aldrin on the moon. 1969 Neil Armstrong took this photograph, which is why Armstrong is almost entirely absent from the visual record of the moon landing. Aldrin's visor reflects the scene, including the photographer, who was also the first. 1972 Toyota RV2 camper. Toyota built this concept in 1972 to imagine a self-contained mobile life. It never entered production. The proportions are entirely wrong for any road that actually exists. That's precisely why it still matters. Winston Churchill at BOAC Boeing 314A controls. January 16, 1942 Britain was still absorbing the shock of Pearl Harbor. Churchill was flying to Washington to coordinate the Allied response. He climbed into the pilot's seat because he was constitutionally incapable of simply being a passenger. Skylab crashes near Esperance, Western Australia. 1979 NASA's trajectory calculations were off by 1,200 kilometers. Instead of the Indian Ocean, debris scattered across Western Australia. Esperance issued NASA a $400 fine for littering. It went unpaid for 30 years. A and B telephone box. 1950s press A to connect. Press B to get your money back if no one answered. The entire ethical architecture of the payphone rested on 2 buttons. Vandals discovered button B first. Mission accomplished. George W. Bush. 2003 The banner was intended for the USS Abraham Lincoln's crew completing their deployment. The White House later acknowledged the framing against it was a mistake. The war continued for 8 more years. Farmer on bicycle with milk buckets, Netherlands. 1946 1 year after liberation, Dutch farms were rebuilding from near total collapse. The hunger winter of 1944-45 had killed 22,000 people. By 1946, the milk was moving again. The bicycle never stopped being the solution. Boy sharing news of Gagarin's spaceflight, USSR. 1961 he ran to the shepherd because some news cannot wait for any appropriate audience. Yuri Gagarin had just orbited the Earth. The shepherd was the nearest human being. That was qualification enough. Rowan and Martin's laugh-in joke wall. The writers taped material to that wall for years. Jokes, callbacks, one-liners waiting for the right moment. Television in 1968 had never moved this fast. Most audiences watched the first season completely bewildered. Polish girl in Persian mountains. 1942 Soviet labor camps deported her family from Poland in 1939. The British-Soviet evacuation brought her through Iran by 1942. She traveled from Siberia to Persia as a child, carrying whatever memories survived both. Cup of Tea by Fireside, County Donegal. July 1945. The war in Europe had just ended. In this corner of Ireland, which had stayed officially neutral, July 1945 looked almost identical to July 1935. The fire was the same. The tea was the same. Donald Trump in Moscow. July 1987. He was 41, recently published, and arrived at the Soviet ambassador's invitation exploring hotel development possibilities. The visit lasted several days. 30 years later, the details of what was discussed still generate questions. Gorange chess freezer frenzy, Hungary. 1989. The Berlin Wall fell in November 1989. Before it did, Hungarian consumers were already flooding stores for Yugoslav appliances, a sign that the command economy was losing the argument to consumer desire at the shelf level. Radio Shack. At peak popularity, Radio Shack once operated 7,000 stores across America. They sold you the components to build the thing, not just the thing itself. That distinction between maker and consumer was the entire identity. It lost the argument gradually, then completely. Jordan Belfort's mugshot. 1998. The FBI arrested him for a fraud scheme that cost investors $200 million. He served 22 months. Martin Scorsese later made a film about him starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Belfort served as a consultant on his own story. Cornish fisherman making lobster pots, willow withers bent into inkwell shapes, woven by hand on a harbor wall. The design was unchanged for centuries because the lobster didn't change. The fisherman worked with the same patience the trap required. Patrick O'Neill, one-armed blacksmith, Tottenham. 1929. He had a prosthetic arm built specifically for the forge. Tottenham in 1929 had no disability accommodations, no adaptive equipment industry. Just one man who needed to keep working and found someone to help him do it. Leonardo DiCaprio and Mother Ermelin, Los Angeles. 1975. She raised him alone in East Los Angeles. Single parent, German immigrant, and the first person who believed in what he would become. He was 1 year old. She already knew. Shinzui, later die. Mwangdu Mummy. Discovered 1971. She died around 163 BC and was buried with such precision, sealed in nested lacquer coffins packed with mercury, that her skin was still soft when archaeologists opened the tomb 2,100 years later. British dogs bandages retrieved. World War I. 1915. Dogs carried medical supplies across no man's land. This one's kit is being restocked after a run. It ran where men could not, low to the ground, fast, indifferent to the sounds that froze soldiers solid. Johnny Cash flipping the bird. San Quentin. 1969. Photographer Jim Marshall asked Cash to give the establishment a message. Cash obliged instantly. The image was suppressed for years before becoming the most recognized photograph of any musician ever taken. Marshall kept the negative. Two servicewomen in uniform. Circa 1940s, their uniforms are pressed and their expressions are steady. They belong to a generation of women who entered military service before the world had decided what to call them. They called themselves soldiers. Elizabeth Hurley at 1999 Met Gala. The Met Gala in 1999 was still a fashion industry event rather than a cultural performance. She attended in something that made the room reconsider its assumptions. The photographs circulated for years. They still do. Yuri Gagarin on vacation in Sochi. 1961. 1 month after orbiting Earth, he lounged in a Black Sea resort like a man who had earned it absolutely. He had. The Soviet state photographed his rest as proof of the system's generosity. Edward Jenner. Smallpox vaccine. He noticed milkmaids didn't get smallpox, only cowpox, and made the logical leap that nearly everyone else had missed for centuries. He tested it on a child in 1796. It worked. Smallpox killed 300 million people after that. Not because of Jenner. Marilyn Monroe Kodachrome modeling photo. 1946. Before the studios renamed her. Before the platinum transformation, before everything that followed. She was Norma Jean Doherty, 20 years old, photographed in early Kodachrome for a modeling portfolio. The camera already knew. James Dean with Sammy Davis Jr., Ursula Andress, Frank Sinatra. 1955. Dean had shaved his hairline back for Jet Rink and Giant. He died before it wrapped. The photograph captures him between identities, already past the haircut, not yet past anything else. John Rabe at Nanjing, 1937. His Nazi Party membership were the only credential the Japanese commanders recognized. He used it to protect a safety zone housing 250,000 civilians. When he returned to Germany, the Gestapo arrested him for telling the story. 1st Battalion South African Police Graves. Badia fell to Australian forces in January 1941 in one of the first Allied victories of the North African Campaign. These graves mark men who arrived from the southern tip of a continent to die at the Libyan coast. Anna May Wong and Ramon Novarro, across to Singapore. 1928, she was the first Chinese-American film star and was repeatedly cast as a villain or a victim because Hollywood's production codes prevented her from being cast as a romantic lead opposite white actors. Novarro got the kiss. She got the frame. Red Warriors, Paris, 1986 to 1992. They formed to fight fascist skinhead gangs attacking immigrant communities in Paris, using the same aesthetic vocabulary their opponents did, minus the ideology. 6 years of street-level anti-fascism, then dissolution. The photographs are the only record. Helen Slater as Supergirl, 1984. She was 20 years old and cast in her first film as DC's most underwritten superhero. The film failed critically and commercially. Slater's performance was the only element reviewers consistently defended. She knew the cape deserved better. Two best friends since 1941. Care home they had been 10 minutes apart for over 80 years. When the distance finally threatened to grow, one moved to be beside the other. The friendship outlasted every other arrangement either of them had made. Tourists climbing the Great Pyramid. Early 1900s, climbing the Great Pyramid was legal and popular through the early 20th century. Local guides pulled tourists upward from block to block, each limestone step taller than a man's waist. It was banned in 1951. Ukrainian servicewoman Alina Stepanev. Circa 1914 to 1918, she was a university-educated intelligence officer who commanded units in the Ukrainian Sich Riflemen, one of the first women to hold military rank in Ukrainian history. She survived the war. She survived everything. Father-son photos, 1985 and 2025, 40 years between frames. The pose is the same. The hands are the same. Everything else has moved at the speed that everything always moves, which is to say, faster than anyone ever expects. Jean Leon Jerome, Master of the Hounds, 1871. Jerome painted the Ottoman world with extraordinary technical precision and absolute Orientalist conviction. His hounds are more individualized than most of his human subjects. The French Academy considered this his greatest virtue. Otis Spann, Hubert Sumlin, Muddy Waters and James Triplett, Memphis, 1956. 3 architects of Chicago blues and 1 photographer in a Memphis hotel room in the year rock and roll was being invented from the exact materials these men had been using for decades.